the Rechabites, for Ebed-Melech, and for Baruch. J 35. 18, 19. 39. 16-18. 45. 1-5. Jehovah is brilliantly portrayed as the creator of all things, the king to time indefinite, the only true God. He is the only one to be feared, the corrector and director of those calling on his name, and the one under whose denunciation no nation can hold up. He is the great potter, in whose hand individuals and nations are as clay pottery, for him to work with or destroy as he pleases. J 10. 18. 1-10. Row 9. 19-24. The book of Jeremiah reveals that God expects the people bearing his name to be a glory and a praise to him, and that he considers them close to him. J 13. 11. Those who prophesy falsely in his name, saying peace to those with whom God is not at peace, have to account to God for their words, and they will stumble and fall. 6. 13-15. 8. 10-12. 23. 16-20. Those standing before the people as priests and prophets have great responsibility before God, for, as he told those in Judah, I did not send the prophets, yet they themselves ran. I did not speak to them, yet they themselves. A record of Jehovah's judgment proclamations through Jeremiah, as well as an account of the prophet's own experiences and of Babylon's destruction of Jerusalem. Writing was begun about 18 years before Jerusalem fell, and was completed some 27 years after that event. Youthful Jeremiah is commissioned as a prophet. He will have to tear down as well as build and plant. Jehovah will strengthen him for the commission. 1-19. Jeremiah fulfills his commission to tear down. He exposes the wickedness in Judah and proclaims the certainty of Jerusalem's destruction. The presence of the temple will not save the unfaithful nation. God's people will be exiles for 70 years in Babylon. 2. 1. 3. 13. 3. 19. 16. 13. 17. 1. 19. 15. 24. 1. 25. 38. 29. 1-32. 34. 1-22. Judgments are announced against Zedekiah and Joachim, as well as against false prophets, unfaithful shepherds, and faithless priests. 21. 1. 23. 2. 23. 9-40. 27. 1. 28. 17. Jehovah foretells humiliating defeats of many nations, including the Babylonians. 46. 1. 51. 64. Jeremiah carries out his assignment to build and to plant. He points to the restoration of an Israelite remnant and the raising up of a righteous sprout. 3. 14-18. 16. 14-21. 23. 3-8. 30. 1. 31. 26. 33. 1-26. He also announces that Jehovah will conclude a new covenant with his people. 31. 27-40. At Jehovah's direction, Jeremiah buys a field in order to illustrate the certainty that Israel will return from exile. 32. 1-44. He assures the Rechabites that they will survive, because they obeyed their forefather Jehonadab. Their obedience shows up Israel's disobedience to Jehovah. 35. 1-19. He reproves Baruch and strengthens him with the assurance of surviving the coming calamity. 45. 1-5. Jeremiah suffers, because of his bold prophesying. He is struck and placed in the stocks overnight. 20. 1-18. O textoi acute miritra longo. Jemuth 34 prophesied. But if they had stood in my intimate group, then they would have made my people hear my own words, and they would have caused them to turn back from their bad way and from the badness of their dealings. 23. 21, 22. As in other books of the Bible, God's holy nation is considered to be in relationship to him as a wife, and unfaithfulness to him is prostitution. J 3. 1-3, 6-10. Compare J 4. 4. Jehovah's own loyalty to his covenants, however, is unbreakable. J 31. 37. 33. 20-22, 25, 26. Many are defined principles and illustrations in the book, upon which the other Bible writers have drawn for reference. And many other pictorial and prophetic patterns are found that have application and vital meaning to the modern-day Christian and his ministry. Jemoth Jeri middle dot moth from a root meaning be high exalted. 1. A descendant of Benjamin through his son Becca. 1 ch 7. 6, 8. 2. A Benjamite head of a family that lived in Jerusalem. One of Beri's sons. 1 ch 8. 14:16, 28. 3. Son of Mushi and grandson of Merari in the tribe of Levi. The paternal house founded by this person, whose name is also spelled Jeremoth, was included in David's rearrangement of the Levitical service organization. 1 ch 23. 21, 23. 24. 30, 31. 4. A son of Heman in the Levitical branch of Kohathites. During David's reign, Jeremoth was selected by Lot, the head the 15th of the 24 divisions of sanctuary musicians. 1 ch 6. 33. 25. 1, 4, 8, 9, 22. 5, 6, 7. 3 Israelites, of the sons of Elam, Zatu, and Bani respectively, who sent away their foreign wives and sons in Ezra's day. Ez 10. 25-27, 29, 44. Jeriah middle dot Re'ah Jehovah see. Jehovah has seen. Son or descendant of Kohath's son Hebron. 1 ch 23. 12, 19 Jeriah his paternal house is mentioned in connection with David's organization of the Levites 1 ch 24. 23, 30, 31 and, when appointed over territory of the Jordan, is called the head of the Hebronites. In this instance his name is spelled Jerijah. 1 ch 26. 31, 32. Jabajai middle dot by may he content. He has conducted our legal case. One of David's mighty men. Son of Elnam. 1 ch 11. 26, 46. Jericho Jerai middle dot show possibly, Moon City. The first Canaanite city W of the Jordan to be conquered by the Israelites. New 22. 1. Jos 6. 1, 24, 25 It is identified with Tel Ez Salt and Tel Yerio about 22 kilometers 14 mi of Jerusalem. Nearby Tulal Abuel Lake is considered to be the site of 1st century Jericho. Lying about 250 meters 820 feet below sea level in the Jordan Valley, Jericho has a subtropical climate. Today oranges, bananas, and figs are cultivated in the area and, as anciently, palms still thrive there. First fruits of Israel's conquest. At the end of their 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, the Israelites came to the plains of Moab. There, opposite Jericho, Moses ascended Mount Nebo and viewed the promised land, including Jericho, the city of the palm trees, and its plain. New 36. 13. The 32. 49. 34. 1-3. After Moses' death Joshua sent 2 spies to Jericho. Concealed by Rahab, they avoided detection and afterward escaped from the city by means of prophecies recorded by Jeremiah ones that he saw fulfilled the captivity of Zedekiah and destruction of Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. 20. 3-6. 21. 3-10. 39. 6-9 The dethronement and death in captivity of King Shalom Hajj. 22. 11, 12. 2 Chi 23. 30-34. 2 ch 36. 1-4 The taking captive of King Jehoiachin to Babylon. 22. 24-27. 2 Chi 24. 15, 16 The death, within 1 year, of the false prophet Hananiah. 28. 16, 17 Some of the Rechabites and Ebmelech the Ethiopian surviving Jerusalem's destruction. 35. 19. 39. 15-18 Others concerning which history records fulfillment Egypt invaded, conquered by Nebuchadnezzar 43. 8-13. 46. 13-26 The return of the Jews and O textoi acute miritra longo. Jericho 35 wrote through the window of her house situated atop Jericho's wall. For 3 days the two men hid themselves in the nearby Mount Venus region, after which they forded the Jordan and returned to the Israelite camp. Jos 2. 1-23. Great must have been the fear of Jericho's king and its inhabitants as they heard about or witnessed the miraculous damming up of the flooding Jordan, enabling the Israelites to cross on dry ground. Afterward, although the Israelite males underwent circumcision and had to recover from its effects before being in a good position to defend themselves, no one dared to attack them at Gilgal. Unmolested, the Israelites also observed the Passover on the desert plain of Jericho. Jos 5. 1-10. Later, near Jericho, an angelic prince appeared to Joshua and outlined the procedure for taking the city, which was then tightly shut up on account of the Israelites. Obediently, once a day for 6 days the Israelite military force went forth, followed by 7 priests continually blowing their horns, behind whom were the priests carrying the ark, and finally the rear guard. All marching around Jericho. But on the 7th day they marched around the city 7 times. At the blowing of the horns on the final march around Jericho, the people shouted a great war cry, and the city's walls began to fall flat. Jos 5. 13. 6. 20. The Israelites then rushed into Jericho, devoting its inhabitants and all domestic animals to destruction. But on account of the kindness shown by Rahab in hiding the spies, she and her relatives, safe in her house atop the portion of the wall that had not fallen, were preserved alive. The entire city was burned, but the gold and silver were turned over to Jehovah's sanctuary. Jos 6. 20-25 However, one Israelite, Achan, stole a gold bar, some silver, and a fine garment and then hid the items under his tent. Thereby he brought death upon himself and his entire family. Jos 7. 20-26. Later historical references. The destroyed city of Jericho subsequently became part of Benjamite territory bordering on Ephraim and Manasseh. Jos 16. 1, 7. 18. 12, 21 Not long thereafter some kind of settlement apparently sprang up at the site. It was captured by Moab's king Eglon and remained under his control for 18 years. JG 3. 12-30 In the time of King David a settlement continued to exist at Jericho. 2 10. 5. 1 ch 19. 5 But not until Ahab's reign did Hiel the Bethelite actually rebuild Jericho. The prophetic curse pronounced by Joshua over 500 years earlier was then fulfilled, Hiel losing Abiram his firstborn as he laid the foundation, and Segub his youngest son when he put up the doors. Jos 6. 26. 1 Chi 16. 34. During this same general period some of the sons of the prophets resided at Jericho. 2 Chi 2. 4, 5 After Jehovah took the prophet Elijah away in a windstorm, Elisha remained at excavation of walls of ancient Jericho, Jeriel 36 Jericho for a time, and healed the city's water supply. 2 Chi 2. 11-15, 19-22 The water of Ain is Sultan traditionally. The fountain that Elisha healed has been described as sweet and pleasant, and irrigates the gardens of modern Jericho. In the time of wicked Judean King Ahaz, Jehovah permitted the Israelite armies under King Pekah to inflict a humiliating defeat upon unfaithful Judah, killing 120,000 and taking 200,000 captives. But Jehovah's prophet Oded met the returning victors and warned them not to enslave the captives. Accordingly, the captives, after being clothed and fed, were taken to Jericho and released. 2 ch 28. 6-15. After the fall of Jerusalem in 607 BCE King Zedekah fled in the direction of Jericho, but was overtaken and captured by the Babylonians in the desert plains of Jericho. 2 Chi 25. 5. J 39. 5. 52. 8 Following the release from Babylonian exile, 345 sons of Jericho were among those returning with Zerubbabel in 537 BCE and apparently settled at Jericho. As 2. 1, 2, 34. NE 7. 36 later, some of the men of Jericho assisted in rebuilding the wall of Jerusalem. NE 3. 2. In the year 33 CE, Jericho figured in Jesus' ministry when he was on his way to Jerusalem for the Passover. Near this city Jesus Christ healed the sight of blind Bartimaeus and his companion. Mr. 10. 46. Mount 20. 29. Lu 18. 35. See Bartimaeus. At Jericho, Jesus also met Zacchaeus, and thereafter was a guest at his home. Lu 19. 1-7 Earlier in Judea, when giving his illustration of the neighborly Samaritan, Jesus alluded to the road from Jerusalem to Jericho. Lu 10. 30 This road, according to ancient historical testimony, was frequented by robbers. Have archaeologists found evidence of the destruction of Jericho in the days of Joshua? Professor John Garstang, leader of an English expedition at El Sultan between 1929 and 1936, found that what he considered to be one of the cities built on the site had been subjected to intense fires and its walls had fallen. This city he identified with the Jericho of Joshua's time and assigned its destruction to about 1400 BCE. Although some scholars today still endorse Garstang's conclusions, others interpret the evidence differently. Writes archaeologist G. Ernest Wright. The two walls which surrounded the summit of the old city, which Garstang believed were destroyed by earthquake and fire in Joshua's time, were discovered to date from the 3rd millennium and to represent only two of some 14 different walls or wall components built successively during that age. Biblical Archaeology, 1962, pages 79, 80. Many feel that little, if anything, remains of the Jericho that existed in Joshua's time, earlier excavations at the site having removed what might have survived from the time of its destruction. As Professor Jack Finnegan notes, there is now, therefore, virtually no evidence at the site by which to try to determine at what date Joshua might have taken Jericho. Light from the Ancient Past, 1959, p. 159. For this reason numerous scholars date the fall of Jericho on circumstantial evidence, and suggested dates span a period of about 200 years. In view of such uncertainty, Professor Mary Leffinger fittingly observes, scholars also must be extremely wary of attaching undue authority to archaeologists' estimates of dates and interpretation of data. That the fixing of dates and the conclusions drawn from archaeological findings often depend on subjective factors is amply demonstrated by the wide divergences between competent authorities on these matters. Archaeology in the Old Testament, 1964, p. 164. Therefore, the fact that the interpretations of archaeologists do not agree with biblical or textual acute miritra longo, Jeroboam 37, 6. The son of David whose daughter married King Rehoboam. 2ch 11. 18 As Jeremoth is not included in the listings of David's sons by his named wives, he might have been a son by a concubine or by an unnamed wife. 2 5. 13 Jeremoth was apparently married to his cousin Abiel, the daughter of David's oldest brother Eliab. 2ch 11. 18. 1 17. 13. 7. One of the Levite commissioners caring for the generous contribution, tithe, and holy things brought in during Hezekiah's reign. 2ch 31. 12, 13. Jerioth Jerai middle dotteth from a root verb meaning quiver. It is likely that Jerioth was a concubine or handmaid of Caleb who bore some of his sons credited to Azubah his wife. 1 Chronicles 2. 18 reads, Caleb became father to sons by Azubah his wife and by Jerioth. And these were her sons. Jeroboam Boam. 2 kings of Israel whose reigns were separated by some 130 years. 1. First king of the 10-tribe kingdom of Israel. The son of Nebat, one of Solomon's officers in the village of Zeredah. Of the tribe of Ephraim. Apparently at an early age Jeroboam was left fatherless, to be raised by his widowed mother Zeruiah. 1 11. 26. When Solomon observed that Jeroboam was not only a valiant, mighty man but also a hard worker, he put him in charge of the compulsory labor force of the house of Joseph. 1:11. 28. Subsequently, Jeroboam was approached by God's prophet Ahijah with startling news. After tearing his own new garment into 12 pieces, the prophet told Jeroboam to take 10 of them in symbol of how Jehovah would rip Solomon's kingdom in two and make Jeroboam king over 10 of the tribes. This, however, was to be merely a governmental division and not also a departure from true worship as centered at the temple in Jerusalem, the capital of the southern kingdom. So Jehovah assured Jeroboam that he would bless and prosper his reign and build him a lasting house of successors provided he kept God's laws and commandments. 1:11. 29-38. Possibly it was upon learning of these events that Solomon sought to kill Jeroboam. However, Jeroboam fled to Egypt, and there under the sheltering protection of Pharaoh Shishak he remained until the death of Solomon. 1:11. 40. The news of Solomon's death in about 998 BCE brought Jeroboam quickly back to his homeland, where he joined his people in demanding that Solomon's son Rehoboam lighten their burdens if he wanted their support of his new kingship. Rehoboam, however, disregarded the good advice of the older counselors in preference to that of younger men his own age who told him to increase the workload of the people. The 10 tribes responded to this harshness by making Jeroboam their king. In reality, this turn of affairs took place at the instance of Jehovah, in order that he might indeed carry out his word that Jehovah had spoken by means of Ahijah. 1:12. 1-20. 2ch10. 1-19. The newly installed King Jeroboam immediately set about building up Shechem as his royal capital, and near Shechem, on the other side of the Jordan, he fortified the settlement of Penuel, the place where Jacob had wrestled with an angel. 1:12. 25. GE 32. 31. Seeing his subjects streaming up to the temple in Jerusalem to worship, Jeroboam envisioned that in time they might switch their allegiance to Rehoboam and then they would kill him. So he decided to put a stop to this by establishing a religion centered around 2 golden calves, which he set up, one at Bethel in the south, the other at Dan in the north. He also set up his own non-Aaronic priesthood, composed of those among the people in general who were willing to procure the office by offering 1 bull and 7 rams. These then served for the high places and for the God-shaped demons and for the calves that he had made. Jeroboam also invented special holy days and personally led the people in sacrificing to his newly created gods. 1:12. 26-33. 2:23. O textoid acute miritra longo, Jeroboam 38. One occasion Abijah assembled 400,000 to battle against Jeroboam's forces twice the size. Despite Jeroboam's superior force and his clever ambush strategy, he was badly beaten. He lost 500,000 men and many of his Ephraimic towns and was greatly humiliated. Judah's victory was because Abijah and his men trusted in Jehovah and cried to him for help. 2ch 13. 3-20. To add to Jeroboam's calamity, his son Abijah fell deathly sick, whereupon the king had his wife disguise herself, and then he sent her with a gift to the old prophet Ahijah, now blind, to inquire whether the child would recover. The answer was no. Additionally, the prediction was made that every male heir of Jeroboam would be cut off, and with the exception of this son, in whom Jehovah found something good, none of Jeroboam's offspring would have a decent burial, but, instead, their carcasses would be eaten either by the dogs or by fowl. 1:14. 1-18. Shortly thereafter, in about 977 BCE, Jehovah dealt Jeroboam a blow, so that he died, bringing to an end his 22-year reign. 2ch 13. 20. 1:14. 20. His son Nadab succeeded him to the throne for 2 years before being killed by Baasha, who also cut off every breathing thing of Jeroboam's house. In this way his dynasty was abruptly terminated according to Jehovah's word, and on account of the sins of Jeroboam. 1:15. 25-30. 2. King of Israel. Son and successor of Jehoash, and great-grandson of Jehu. As the 14th ruler of the northern kingdom, Jeroboam II reigned for 41 years, starting in about 844 BCE to 2ch 14. 16. 23. Like so many of his predecessors, he did what was bad in Jehovah's eyes by perpetuating the calf worship of Jeroboam I 2 Kai 14. 24. Notice is taken of a special genealogical registration, evidently made during the reign of Jeroboam II. 1 ch. 5. 17. However, the outstanding achievement of his reign was the restoration of land that had earlier been lost by the kingdom. In fulfillment of Jonah's prophecy, Jeroboam restored the boundary of Israel from the entering in of Hamath clear to the Sea of the Araba Dead Sea. He is also credited with restoring Damascus and Hamath to Judah in Israel. 2 Kai 14. 25-28. This may mean that Jeroboam made the kingdoms of Damascus and Hamath tributary, as they had once been to Judah during the reign of Solomon. Compare 1 Kai 4. 21. 2 ch. 8. 4. In the wake of these successes doubtless came a wave of material prosperity for the northern kingdom. But at the same time the nation continued in its spiritual decline. The prophets Hosea and Amos had some harsh criticism to offer rebellious Jeroboam and his supporters for their outright apostasy, as well as their immoral conduct. Fraud, thievery, fornication, murder, oppression, idolatry, and other God-dishonoring practices. Ho 1. 2, 4. 4. 1, 2, 12-17. 5. 1-7. 6. 10. And 2. 6-8. 3. 9, 12-15. 4. One particularly pointed was Jehovah's warning to Jeroboam by the mouth of his prophet Amos. I will rise up against the house of Jeroboam with a sword. Am 7. 9. After Jeroboam's death, his son Zechariah ascended a throne. 2 Kai 14. 29. However, there was a gap of 11 years between Jeroboam's death and the 6-month rule credited to Zechariah, the last of Jehu's dynasty. Possibly because Zechariah was very young, or for some other reason, his kingship was not fully established or confirmed as his until about 792 BCE. Jeroham G. Roham may he be shown mercy. 1. Father of Elkanah and grandfather of Samuel. Descendant of the Levite Kehath. 1 1. 1, 19, 20. 1 ch. 6. 22, 27, 34, 38. 2. A Benjamite of Dor, whose 2 sons were named among David's helpers in the warfare while he was at Ziklag under Saul's restrictions. 1 ch. 12. 1, 2, 7. 3. Father of Azarel, the prince of the tribe of Dan under King David. 1 ch. 27. 1, 22. 4. Father of Azariah, one of the army chiefs who helped Jehoiada install Jehoash as king. 2 ch. 23. 1, 11. 5. The descendant of Benjamin O textoe acute miritra longo, Jerusalem 39 side of Gideon, saying, Will you be the ones to make a legal defense for Baal to see whether you yourselves may save him? Whoever makes a legal defense for him ought to be put to death even this morning. If he is God, let him make a legal defense for himself, because someone has pulled down his altar. The Bible account continues. And he began to call him Jerubbaal on that day, saying, Let Baal make a legal defense in his own behalf, because someone has pulled down his altar. JG 6. 28-32. Gideon is called Jerubbaal 2 Samuel 11. 21. See Gideon. Jerubbaal G middle.Rub let the shameful thing make a legal defense contend. The name of Judge Gideon found at 2 Samuel 11. 21. Evidently this is a form of Jerubbaal, the name given to Gideon by his father Joash when Gideon pulled down the altar of Baal. JG 6. 30-32. Some scholars believe that the writer of 2 Samuel replaced Baal with the Hebrew word for Shembosheth in order not to use the name of the false god Baal as part of a proper name. See Gideon. Jerulgi middle.Ruel possibly, later erected by God. A wilderness apparently situated somewhere between the cities of Tekoa and Engedi. Its exact location and extent are today unknown. 2 ch. 20. 2, 16, 20. Jerusalem G Rusa Lem Possession Foundation of Twofold Peace. The capital city of the ancient nation of Israel from the year 1070 BCE onward. Following the division of the nation into two kingdoms 997 BCE, Jerusalem continued as the capital of the southern kingdom of Judah. Throughout the scriptures there are more than 800 references to Jerusalem. Name. The earliest recorded name of the city is Salem. GE 14. 18. Whereas some try to associate the meaning of the name Jerusalem with that of a West Semitic god named Shalem, the Apostle Paul shows that peace is the true meaning of the latter half of the name. Heb 7. 2. The Hebrew spelling of this latter half suggests a dual form, hence twofold peace. In Akkadian Assyro-Babylonian texts the city was called Jerusalem or Yerushalayim. On this basis some scholars give the meaning of the name as City of Peace. But the Hebrew form, which logically ought to govern, apparently means possession foundation of twofold peace. Many other expressions and titles were used in the scriptures to refer to the city. The psalmist on one occasion uses the earlier name, Salem. PS 76. Two other appellations were City of Jehovah is 60. 14. Town of the Grand King PS 48. 2. Compare Mount 5. 35, City of Righteousness and Faithful Town is a 1. 26, Zion is a 33. 20, and Holy City Ami 11. 1. Isla 48. 2. 52. 1. Mount 4. 5. The name El-Quds, meaning the Holy City, is still the popular name for it in Arabic. The name shown on present-day maps of Israel is Yerushalayim. Location. Comparatively remote from principal international trade routes, Jerusalem lay on the edge of an arid wilderness, the wilderness of Judah, its water supplies being limited. Nevertheless, two internal trade routes did intersect near the city. One ran in the NS direction along the top of the plateau forming the backbone of ancient Palestine, and this route linked together such cities as Dothan, Shechem, Bethel, Bethlehem, Hebron, and Beersheba. The second route ran in an EW direction from Rabbah modern Amman, cut through torrent valleys to the Jordan River basin, ascended the steep Judean slopes, and then wound down the western slopes to the Mediterranean coast and the seaport town of Joppa. Additionally, Jerusalem was centrally located for the whole area of the Promised Land, hence appropriate for a state administration center. Lying about 55 kilometers 34 mainland from the Mediterranean Sea and some 25 kilometers 16 MW of the northern end of the Dead Sea, Jerusalem rests among the hills of the Central Mountain Range. Compare PS 125. 2. Its altitude of about 750 meters, 2,500 feet above sea level made Otextoi acute Miritra Longo, Jerusalem 40. The Valley of Hinnom on the south and west. A central valley, apparently referred to by Josephus as the Doropian Valley or the Valley of the Cheesemakers, bisected the city area into eastern and western hills or spurs. The Jewish War, v. 136, 144, This central valley has filled in considerably throughout the centuries, but a visitor still must make a rather sharp descent to a central hollow and then climb up the other side when crossing the city. There is evidence that, in addition to the NS Central Valley, two smaller EW valleys, or depressions, further divided the hills, one cutting across the eastern hill and the other across the western. The steep valley walls seem to have been incorporated into the city's defensive wall system in all periods. The only side of the city lacking in natural defense was that on the end, and here the walls were made especially strong. When attacking the city in 70 CE, General Titus, according to Josephus, was faced with 3 successive walls on that side. Water supply. Jerusalem's inhabitants suffered from serious food shortages in siege, but evidently had no great water problem. 4. In spite of its nearness to the arid Judean wilderness, the city had access to a constant supply of fresh water and had adequate storage facilities within the city walls. 2 springs, Rogel and Gihon, were located near the city. The first lay a little less of the junction of the Kidron and Hinnom valleys. While a valuable source of water, its position made it inaccessible during times of attack or siege. The Gihon spring lay on the W side of the Kidron Valley, alongside what came to be called the City of David. Though outside the city walls, It was close enough that a tunnel could be excavated connecting to a shaft, enabling the city's inhabitants to draw water without going outside the protective walls. This was done early in the city's history, according to the archaeological evidence. In 1961 and 1962, excavations revealed a substantial early wall, situated below the upper end, or entrance, of the tunnel, hence enclosing it. It is thought to be the wall of the old Jebusite city. Over the years, additional tunnels and canals were formed to channel Gihon's waters. One channel ran from the mouth of the cave of the Gihon spring down the valley and around the end of this hill to a pool located at the junction of the Hinnom Valley with the central or European Valley. According to what has been found, it was in the form of a trench, covered with flat stones, and tunneled through the hillside at points. Openings at intervals allowed for water to be drawn off the irrigation of the valley terraces below. The canal's gradient of about 4 or 5 millimeters per meter, less than 0.2 inches per yard, produced a slow gentle flow, reminding one of the waters of the Shiloh that are going gently. Issa 8. 6. It is suggested that this canal, unprotected and vulnerable, was constructed during Solomon's reign, when peace and security were predominant. Jerusalem's homes and buildings were evidently equipped with underground cisterns, supplementing the supply of water from springs. Rainwater collected from the roofs was stored therein, kept clean and cool. The temple area seems to have had particularly large cisterns, archaeologists claiming to have plotted 37 cisterns there with a total capacity of about 38,000 kl 10,000-000 gallons, one cistern alone estimated as capable of holding 7,600 kl 2 million gallons. Over the centuries a number of aqueducts, or conduits, were built, in order to provide water for Jerusalem. Tradition ascribes to Solomon the construction of a conduit from the pools of Solomon 3 reservoirs of Bethlehem to the temple enclosure at Jerusalem. At Ecclesiastes 2. 6, Solomon says, I made pools of water for myself, to irrigate with them the forest. Such a large undertaking as the building of the pools could well have included Otextoi acute Muritra Longo, Jerusalem 41 Bashan. Then, too, the city was destroyed a number of times, with new cities built on top of the ruins and often made, in part, from material of those ruins. The piling up of debris and rubble, in some places about 30 meters, 100 feet deep, has obscured the early contours of the site and made the interpretation of the excavated evidence a precarious task. Some wall sections, pools, water tunnels, and ancient tombs have been unearthed, but very little written material. Principal archaeological discoveries have come from this hill, which now lies outside the city walls. The main sources of information regarding the ancient city, therefore, remain the Bible and the description of the first-century city given by Jewish historian Josephus. Early history. The first historical mention of the city comes in the decade between 1943 and 1933 BCE when Abraham's encounter with Melchizedek took place. Melchizedek was king of Salem and priest of the Most High God. GE 14. 17-20. However, the origins of the city and of the population that composed it are as wrapped in obscurity as is the origin of its king-priest Melchizedek. Compare Heb 7. 1-3. Apparently another event in Abraham's life involved the vicinity of Jerusalem. Abraham was commanded to offer up his son Isaac on one of the mountains in the land of Moriah. The temple built by Solomon was erected on Mount Moriah on a site that previously had been a threshing floor. GE 22. 2. 2ch3. 1. Thus, the Bible apparently links the place of Abraham's attempted sacrifice with the mountainous region around Jerusalem. See Moriah. Whether Melchizedek was still living then is not revealed. But Salem likely remained friendly territory for Abraham. The account of Joshua's sweeping conquest of Canaan lists Adoni-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, among the Confederate kings attacking Gibeon. His name meaning my Lord is righteousness closely parallels that of Jerusalem's earlier king Melchizedek, king of righteousness, but Adoni-Zedek was no worshipper of the Most High God, Jehovah. Jos 10. 1-5, 23, 26. 12. 7, 8, 10. The Amarna tablets, many written by Canaanite rulers to their Egyptian overlord, include a number of letters from the king-governor of Jerusalem. His letters are generally agreed to have been sent during the reign of Pharaoh Akhenaten. Though written in Akkadian, They contain many local Canaanite words and inflections. In the letters, Jerusalem is described as a city kingdom that was struggling to maintain its control of the surrounding region. In the allotting of tribal territories, Jerusalem was on the boundary between Judah and Benjamin, the specific border running along the valley of Hinnom. This would place at least what comprised the later city of David, situated on the ridge between the Kidron and Tyropian valleys, within the territory of Benjamin. Apparently the Canaanite city had additional settlements, or suburbs, however, and part of the settled area may have overlapped into Judah's territory to the W&S of the valley of Hinnom. Judah is credited with the initial capture of Jerusalem at Judges 1:8, but after the invading forces moved on, the Jebusite inhabitants apparently remained or returned in sufficient force to form a later pocket of resistance that neither Judah nor Benjamin could break. Thus, of both Judah and Benjamin it is said that the Jebusites continued dwelling with them in Jerusalem. Jos 15:63. JG 1:21. This situation continued for some 4 centuries, and the city was at times referred to as Jebus, a city of foreigners. JG 19:10-12. 1ch 11. 4:5. During the United Kingdom, King Saul's headquarters were at Gibeah in the territory of Benjamin. King David's capital city was first at Hebron in Judah, about 30 kilometers 19 MSSW of Jerusalem. After ruling there a total of 7.5 years to 5, he determined to transfer the capital to Jerusalem. O textoi acute miritra longo. Jerusalem 42 moved his capital there 1070 BCE. The Jebusite strongholds now came to be known as the City of David, also called Zion. 2:5-7. David began a building program within the area, apparently also improving the city's defenses. 2:5-9-11. 1ch 11. 8. The Mount Heb. Ham middle.mil.lo referred to here 2:5-9 and in later accounts 1 Chi 9. 15, 24. 11. 27 was some geographic or structural feature of the city, well known then but unidentifiable today. When David later transferred the sacred Ark of Jehovah from the house of Obed-Edom to Jerusalem, the city became the religious, as well as administrative, center of the nation. 2:6. 11, 12, 17. See burial places. David, city of Mount. There is no record of Jerusalem's being attacked by enemy forces during David's reign, as he carried the battle to his foes. Compare 2:5. 17-25. 8. 1-14. 11. 1. On one occasion, however, David saw fit to abandon the city before the advance of rebel forces led by his own son, Absalom. The king's retreat may have been to avoid having bloodshed in civil war at this place where Jehovah's name rested. 2:15. 13-17. Whatever the motive for the retreat, it led to the fulfillment of the inspired prophecy spoken by Nathan. 2:12. 11. 16. 15-23. David did not allow the Ark of the Covenant to be evacuated with him but ordered the faithful priests to return it to the city, God's chosen location. 2:15. 23-29. The description of the initial part of David's flight as recorded at 2 Samuel chapter 15 outlines well the geographic features of the area on the ear of the city. Toward the close of his rule, David began preparing construction materials for the temple. 1ch 22. 1, 2. Compare 1 Chi 6. 7. The hewn stones prepared may have been quarried in that area, for the bedrock of Jerusalem itself is easily cut and chiseled to size and shape, yet, upon exposure to the weather, hardens into durable and attractive building stones. There is evidence of an ancient quarry near the present Damascus Gate, vast quantities of rock having been cut out there in the course of time. A further view of the layout of the terrain around Jerusalem, this time to the east, is given in the account of the anointing of Solomon by order of aged King David. Another son, Adonijah, was at the spring of Unrogel, plotting to seize the kingship, when Solomon was anointed at the spring of Gihon. The distance between the 2 points was short enough. See 700 meters, 2,300 feet. That Adonijah and his co-conspirators heard the noise of the horn and celebrations at Gihon. 1 Kai 1. 5-9, 32-41. Solomon's reign saw considerable building and perhaps rebuilding done within the city and the expansion of its limits. 1 Kai 3. 1. 9. 15-19, 24. 11. 27. Compare EC2. 3-6, 9.